all so much for being here. Anyone seeing this for a second, third, fourth time? A couple of you. Well, for the rest of you, welcome to Chuck's World. We are so excited to have one of the stars of this film, the great Mark Hamill. Please give him a very warm applause. Director of the film, Mike Flanagan. Hey guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you guys for all being here tonight. Thank you so much for seeing this in a theater.
Woo!
This film premiered over a year ago at the Toronto Film Festival, where it won the People's Choice Award. A lot of people still seeing it for the first time. It's got to be pretty exciting to have so much discovery of this film for such a long period of time.
Oh my God, yeah, it's. I feel like we've been on quite a journey with this one. But one of the things I love is that people are finding it. But yeah, thank you guys so much, because being able to see it in an environment like this and to see it on a screen like this just means the world to all of us that work on it. Thank you.
Well, let's start. I want to start at the beginning of the casting process, actually, this one, as we do have an audience of actors here. I love how you described this movie once, Mike, as a relay race. Because you don't have a central protagonist here necessarily. We do have a title character, of course, but we have different characters occupying the center of different acts of the film. I wonder how that informed the way you cast this movie, where you started and then how you went from there.
Sure, we did talk a lot about feeling like we were casting 3 films while we were doing it, and having to make sure that the casts would be working really beautifully off of each other, even if they never met or shared any screen time. That turned out to be a really interesting consideration. It's something that Mark talked about, because you came to set to meet Chiwetel. And we talked about how kind of funny it was as Mark came in, that it was like, oh yeah, he doesn't actually share the screen with Hiddleston at all.
No, I'm very isolated. And I mean, it's a fantastic cast.
Yeah.
I'd worked with Carl Lumley in House of Usher, but Chiwetel and Karen Gillan and Matthew Lillard and Tom Hiddleston, these are all people I would love to work with. In fact, you know, I told them it was wonderful acting near you, but not actually with you. But and it's you know, I was set up in the wrong way, because I was a huge fan of Mike before we worked together, from The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and so forth. All, you know, either gothic ghost stories, or in the case of Midnight Mass, full-on vampire horror. By the way, have you seen Sinners yet?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Saw it 4 times. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's awesome.
I'm here to talk about this to you. No, but what I'm saying is, so he sent me, I think, an email saying, you know, I'm doing Life of Chuck based on a Stephen King novella, and there might be something in it for you. So I immediately ordered, I think it's called If It Bleeds, that has 3 novellas, which I guess they're longer than short stories, but not long enough to be novels. In any case, between Stephen King and him, I'm thinking this is going to be the epic supernatural horror epic of all time, and I was just, I don't know, the British have a great word, gobsmacked, because I was unprepared for the humanity of it. It's so life-affirming, and it deals with life and death and mortality, and just all of it. It was so inspiring, and just that line, "You contain multitudes," that scene with little Benjamin Paycheck and Kate Siegel just sums up the sort of universal appeal of this movie. I told the producers it's going to be hard to promote it, because how do you describe the indescribable? I mean, I can just say, please see this movie, you can thank me later. That's not really, you can't go on Jimmy Fallon, you know, and with that. But I think it's nice when you go in not knowing anything about it. Because the more you talk about it, the less discovery that you experience as an audience.
We had some interesting times in the casting of it because of when we were making the movie as well. We were a completely independent film. And so when we were shooting this, we were actually one of the only productions up in North America. We were an interim agreement film. We were a waiver film. And so we had actors who were coming in who otherwise I think never would have been available to us, because even though it's like, oh yeah, there's Mark Hamill, there's Tom Hiddleston, Stephen King. I mean, we really didn't have any money when we were making it, and I was asking people to come in for scale. It's like, Lillard came out to shoot for 4 hours for scale. And so there was a lot of kind of going to cast with hat in hand, which is why you see so many of the actors who I love and work with a lot are here, but everyone else we had to kind of approach and say, please come be part of something that's completely unique. We don't know how it'll be received, and we don't know where its home will eventually be, if it will get one. But take a chance and come do something fun. And so yeah, it was a strange process for sure.
Something's always going on. Remember after House of Usher, there was the actors' strike, so we couldn't talk about it. We couldn't promote it at all.
Yeah, it's
always
certainly been a
something.
turbulent time on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
In this city, especially.
Especially, yeah.
I did tweet out the day it premiered, is there anything good on TV tonight? My first draft was, is there anything good on Netflix? And I thought, no, because I don't want to upset my union. But it was just weird. And now this, like he says, we were independent, so we didn't. What was going on that?
I think it was the writer's strike and the SAG strike. It was interesting because this story was published. I first read it in April 2020, so the lockdown was only a couple of weeks old.
That was during COVID. Huh?
Yeah, and reading it. And reading its King's depiction of the end of the world, it hit too close to home for me at first. And I said, I don't know if I can keep reading this, because it felt like the world was really coming apart. And I was so glad I did, because I ended up feeling so hopeful at the end and really moved by it. But what amazes me is that was years ago, and I still feel like it hits too close to home at the very beginning for me, especially now. But I think that's one of the things that King is so incredible at tapping into, is that it's always going to hit close to home, things like that.
I think to Mark's earlier point, when you think of a Stephen King adaptation directed by Mike Flanagan, you might have something in mind. This film subverts that expectation. The casting, in a lot of ways, does. I think that's especially true with Mark. I wonder if you can, Mike, talk a little bit about how you thought of him for this part. Obviously, you worked together before, and showing I think a new side of him on screen.
Well, it's interesting because, for instance, the role that he asked me to play in House of Usher would have been completely routine for me if it were in voiceover. Because in voiceover, you just have to sound right. You don't have to look the part. So you're going to get parts that you would never get on camera. But here was an example of a part that, like I say, wouldn't have been unusual for me if it was an animated project, but on camera to play this soulless, sociopathic enabler of evil. He's the lawyer to this horrific family. And I love the way Mike always lays the foundation where the audience can identify. I mean, because it's going to go off on these supernatural tangents, but it's about a family, the Usher family, who's made billions of dollars on a drug, Ligadone, which is highly addictive and has killed millions of people. So you go, oh, Sackler family, OxyContin, I get it. So there's a baseline that you can relate to, and that's the springboard to all these supernatural things that happen. So in this case, when I read the script, it starts out, it's very complex and detailed and nuanced, but it leads to our act which is simplicity defined. It's young, the two youngest versions of Chuck's life, and you see him, his love of dance, the way Mia Sara, by the way, is just all of them. I loved being in that space because I'm playing a character who's probably fairly dull, drinks a little too much, but what really defined him is when his grandson says that math is boring. Oh my gosh! Then, I mean, the defense of accountants on his part is so impassioned. And I thought, that's who this guy is. I mean, you never really think about it, but that tickled me. And
we had this very fun exchange about this, because Mark, to his earlier point, when I first called about it, I had a wonderful time working with Mark on the House of Usher. We had a blast.
yeah.
And so I was determined to work with him again, and I called him up and said, hey, I have this thing, it's a Stephen King story. And he did expect it to be very scary. So when it hit that it's like, well, the biggest lifting you're going to do here is a 5-page monologue about math, that we had to have a little chat about it. And I remember you were so surprised by just what it was, and you had read the short story by the time we spoke. And it's in there, but the monologue is longer in the film.
Oh.
And Mark said something to me that an actor had never said to me before that stayed with me. Because I said, look, it's a lot of words, and your whole character hinges on kind of building up to this one monologue. And so I know that's a lot, but think it over and see if you want to do it. And he said, well, look, I'm not going to tell you that I think I can do this. You think I can do it, so I'm gonna. And he got off the phone, and that meant the world to me that he saw it that way. And when Mark showed up on set, again, we talk about these different movies we were making. The first thing we shot was the Hiddleston stuff. We started with the dance. So we spent the first 4 days of production watching Tom and Annalise dance. It was incredible. And then after that, we shot the Chiwetel and Karen movie. And Mark was a blast. And so I didn't meet Albie Krantz until toward the end of the shoot, when Mark and Mia Sara came in with Ben Pajak. And I thought I knew what Mark was going to be doing with this. I had an idea of what I thought this character was with Mark Hamill. But the man who arrived on set was not what I expected. And I don't think what anyone expected. I didn't recognize you when you first showed up in wardrobe and hair and makeup. And we all fell in love with this version of Mark that was there. To the point that when we wrapped the picture and came back to LA, I think we saw you at a Christmas party after we wrapped, and you were back to you.
Right.
And it was really shocking to a lot of us who were on there, who had just gotten used to Albie. But it's one of those things where I love working with a lot of the same cast again and again. It's one of my favorite things about my job. One of the things that gets me up in the morning is trying to find a way to see an actor do something I haven't seen from them before. And I'll often go to my cast and say, what's something you've always wanted to play? What's something you've always wanted to try that you haven't gotten to try? Because I'm going to try to write that into the next thing. And with TV, I have an incredible opportunity to do that. It's tougher with the movies. But this was a chance. I knew it was going to be something special from Mark Hamill. I still wasn't prepared for what he actually delivered. And I remember the first day we watched the monologue go off.
A lot of that,
Perfect.
You owe so much to wardrobe, makeup, and hair, because they've all read the script. They're all creative people. So as they're showing me the wardrobe, and you look through this and this and this. Oh, that vest. What about that vest? So you start building, not really knowing what the end result's going to be. I did know. I've always wanted to shave my head bald, and then have like the strands like Don Rickles over the top of his head. But my wife has always put a nix on that. She said, no, you're not shaving your head. And I knew I didn't want to be in the makeup chair for hours in the morning. I mean, simpler is better. So anyway, as they're assembling the wardrobe, I said, well, let's just white out my hair. I grew the mustache as far as I could, white that out, and you're assembling it, looking in the mirror, you know, this is getting closer and closer and closer. The last step was when they brought all the glasses, the spectacles. And I'm going through this, there's a horn room, there's these, oh, what about these? And I put them on, and I looked in the mirror, and I said, is that Geppetto? I wanted to be Albert Grant, but everyone liked it, so I thought, well, I'll just go with it and hope nobody notices.
It was going to be, when he talks about shaving his head, his first pitch for it was he was going to be bald just up the middle with a little patch at the front and full on the sides.
Yeah.
And I was so flattered.
And then,
His wife said, no, you can't do that.
yeah.
And I was like, hey, it's not the end of the world. But I like the Geppetto. I think that would work out.
We do have time for a few quick audience questions. If anyone has anything to tell us. Anyone? Yes.
How much of the audition did they have to do dance for the audition at all? Or how did you know that they could dance or Tom Hiddleston could dance?
I knew Tom Hiddleston could dance because I saw that same clip on social media that everybody else has seen of Tom dancing on a late night talk show.
I saw him in As You Like It, that Shakespearean play in London, and he danced in that.
He's a
Beautifully.
wonderful dancer.
Yes.
Well, I was having lunch with Annalise Basso. I first worked with Annalise when she was 11 years old on my first real movie. It was a haunted mirror movie called Oculus. And Annalise played a young Karen Gillan in it, so it's really fun to see them up here now. But I'd worked with her twice before this, and I was having lunch with Annalise in LA. She was telling me she was considering quitting the business, and that she'd had a rough couple of years. She wasn't booking. She had done some series work and been living in New York and just really struggling. And my heart kind of broke because I met her when she was a kid who, you know, just really wanted to be doing this for a living. And she'd done such a wonderful job over the years. And she said, well, if I have to quit, that's okay, because I can go back to my first love, which is dance. And I kind of perked up, and I said, I didn't know you could dance. And she said, oh yeah, no, I've been doing it since I was 3. And she showed me a video that she had done in the studio earlier that day where she was doing swing dancing. And I was like, okay, well, before you quit acting, would you do one more? And I offered her this part at the lunch. And I didn't know if we were financed yet. And I never want to do that, because the only thing, I'm married to an actor, I know the struggles of actors. The last thing I want to do is make a promise I can't keep when it comes to casting, because I know how it feels to be built up and then knocked down on something. And so the minute, I couldn't help it because I didn't want her to leave, and it felt just so perfect. And so the minute I said, please play this part, and here's the movie, and here's what it's about. Oh, hello. The minute I said that, I was like, oh shit, we better make this movie, because I can't let Annalise down. But yeah, we didn't have them audition with the dancing because we also wanted it to look spontaneous. We wanted them to be good, but we didn't want them to look like, oh my God, these are professional dancers who have been rehearsing this. We wanted it to feel like something they legitimately did in the spur of the moment. And so she and Tom rehearsed for about 6 weeks before we shot. And we just went into it on the faith that they'd be able to do what they did, and they did.
I think that's what makes it so spectacular a sequence, because it develops organically and quite believably. I can't think of another dance sequence that's quite like that. I mean, when you go to see a musical, you expect to see that. This comes out of nowhere. It's not in the book, is it?
It is in the book. Yeah,
They dance?
but it's just described as kind of it's hard to write about the
Exactly.
dance.
Not
they
like
just say
this.
it's dance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question? Yes, you sir.
Did the film always start with the third act? It opens up with Act 3, and then would you find that challenging in directing the actors?
Yes, the structure is exactly the way it is in the novella, and I didn't want to change that. I loved that the story only made sense to me when I got to the end because of this interesting chronology and because of how I think our lives only make sense looking backward, you know? And I think that resonated. It was tough for the actors just because they weren't part of each other's stories. I think for them, it was such an isolating experience. Each one felt like they were making a short film. And I would have to know how they connected directly to each other. But I didn't want them to worry about that. I just wanted them to kind of focus on the arc that they had to execute within the parameters of their act. Yeah.
Time for one more. Yes, you, ma'am.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thanks. You come back to keep shooting in Alabama a lot. How does that compare to shooting in the other locations, Georgia and Toronto and LA?
Misty worked on my crew back in Alabama on a couple projects. So, yes, I started my career shooting Oculus in Mobile, Alabama, and with Karen Gillan and Annalise Basso and a lot of the same crew that I made Oculus, Before I Wake, Hush, all there. Gerald's Game there, and then came back for this. So it felt like a homecoming in a lot of ways, and what was amazing to me was being on set, because it was a little indie again. It reminded me so much of the first film I made there, where everything was held together by duct tape, and our same, my key grip was the same. It was the Damasio's. I mean, it was a lot of I had the same on-set painter that I had at the beginning of my career 13 years later. And so it was very much this sense of, my God, we've all come so far to be right back where we started, and it feels perfect to be back there. It was really neat going to the same restaurants with Karen Gillan that we went to all those years ago. But yeah, and then these days I'm in Vancouver. I just flew back for this. I was there yesterday, and just flew in last night because I wanted to be here for these.
Also want to say, even though there wasn't a question, I was so bowled over by Benjamin Pajak, the one who plays, Cody Flanagan is the youngest Chuck, and the next one up is Benjamin. Now, he had been in the Broadway musical, the revival of The Music Man with Hugh Jackman, and sang Gary, Indiana. So he doesn't sing in the film, he dances, but he's a revelation. I mean, the soulfulness in his face, I just can't praise him enough. He's wonderful in the film, and the audience is so connected to him, and I just think he's wonderful. And here's a little Benjamin Pajak news. He just got cast in the musical version of The Lost Boys. On Broadway. So, and I mean, this kid is so showbiz. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, what was I doing when I was his age? Like, making Aurora monster model kits, I mean, what did I know? I didn't know anybody in showbiz. My family didn't know anybody in showbiz. And here he is doing all these things that I wanted to do when I was his age. And then when he wrote me a note at the end of the film, he said, I think he said, Mr. Hamill or whatever, but he said, thank you for being such a wonderful scene partner. Now, is that an actor or what? Scene partner? Anyway, he is adorable. All I can say, I wish he was my real grandson. And Cody, too. His son. First of all, he was 4 or 5.
He was 6 years old.
Okay.
And this was the first time he's ever acted in anything, and I had to explain to him that the first time you ever act in anything is typically not with Mark Hamill.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if I had been his age on a set, I'd be looking around. I mean, the confidence he had. He came right on set like he owned the joint. And he's ad-libbing like crazy because he's just watching the train going round and round. Mia was supposed to be reading a book, and I was supposed to be watching television. I turned to her and I said, Mia, we can relax. Nobody's going to be looking at us. You can't take your eyes off of Cody. And like I say, he's ad-libbing all aboard, the luggage.
He didn't have any lines.
But I do know you came on set at one point and said to him, now remember when the train goes around the second time, no more smiling. And he goes back to the video village to watch. And I saw Cody doing this. He said, Cody, what are you doing? Very earnestly, not trying to be funny, he said, practicing not smiling. Yeah.
He came up to me and said, I think I would say something here. I think my character would have lines. And I was
What a
like,
smart kid.
you are your mother's son. Through and through.
That's an
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interject, we are at time, but thank you all so much for coming out.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Appreciate it.